President Biden, meanwhile, says he thinks he could have beaten Donald Trump in the 2024 election. But in an interview with USA Today, one of the very few interviews President Biden has granted as he prepares to exit the White House, the president admitted he's not sure that had he won, he would have had the stamina to serve for another 4 years. Here's a quote from President Biden: "Who knows what I'm going to be when I'm 86 years old," unquote. Writer and documentary filmmaker Chris Whipple joins us now. He is the author of the upcoming book, Uncharted: How Trump Beat Biden, Harris, and the Odds in the Wildest Campaign in History. That book, I'm glad to tell you, and I look forward to it, comes out in April. Chris, it's great to see you.
Hey, good to see you, Major.
So, President Biden gives an interview to Susan Page, USA Today, and says he thinks he could have beaten Donald Trump. How do you regard that assertion, Chris?
Yeah, really remarkable, but not all that surprising. I mean, one of his closest friends told me that Joe Biden looks in the mirror almost every night, and depending on whether he's seen Trump on television that day, he says to himself, "I could have beaten that blanking guy." And it's delusional. I mean, I think that we all know, any objective observer watching that debate, that pivotal debate in June 27, knows that that Joe Biden really couldn't have run an effective re-election campaign, much less served for another 4 years. But this conviction on Biden's part goes way, way back, and he's always felt that it was the elites and the press who underestimated him. And of course, in 2020, he finished fourth in Iowa and fifth in New Hampshire and came back and defied the odds. So he still believes it.
Do you think he possesses, based on your knowledge and reporting, Chris, any regrets about not seeing the campaign through, whatever its ultimate outcome?
I don't know about that. I mean, I think that he's smart enough and realistic enough to know that that fateful weekend, July 2021, which I write all about in my upcoming book, and I can't tell you too much about it because my editor would kill me this far in advance. But he was realistic enough to know that there was no path for him because the party leaders had turned against him. And come Monday morning or shortly thereafter, after that fateful weekend, I think everybody would have been coming out against him. He knew that he couldn't carry a totally divided party to victory. But that's a different question from whether he thinks the voters would have come around. And I think he still believes that.
He said in his interview with Susan Page, USA Today, that he hopes history will judge him as someone who brought the country back from the pandemic, stabilized the economy, and reasserted American global leadership. Do you think that is an apt summary of his legacy?
Well, I think his legacy is going to be mixed, Major, because on the one hand, he really did, as I wrote in my book about Biden's first 2 years, he really did come into office facing the most daunting challenges since FDR's time. An economy in free fall, a once-in-a-century pandemic. He stopped that free fall. He brought us through the pandemic. He passed major legislation in a 50-50 Congress. He rallied the West against an invasion of the largest democracy in Europe, and that's a pretty impressive legacy. But it's mixed because, as we all know, he really had a blind spot toward the, toward the ravages of inflation, failed to do anything about the border, and ultimately handed the baton to a candidate who could not beat Donald Trump. And so that's going to be a major part of his legacy as well.
Chris Whipple, always a pleasure. Thank you, sir.
Good to be with you.